Hey guys, June here, and after I posted my last video of me getting the Warden title, a few people asked me to release another video with some extra tips for doing Telos specifically on higher Enrages, so that's what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to try and keep this one short, since the complete Telos guide that I already made pretty much covers everything that you should need to know about the strategy overall, so I'm just going to talk about stuff that I do differently on higher Enrage levels, or maybe things you need to be especially careful of on higher Enrage levels. Coincidentally, the very first thing is actually the first thing you're going to encounter in the Telos fight itself, which is the Tendril bind attack thing that drains your adrenaline and your HP. On low Enrage, this is pretty easy to escape from simply from using wild magic or something, but on high Enrage, the damage that it deals as well as the amount that you need to deal in order to escape from it increases pretty dramatically. Ideally here, you want to use your defender switch and use reflect to both reduce the amount of damage that you're taking from it, and the reflected damage also contributes to the damage that frees you from the attack itself. If you throw something like Wild Magic or Dragon Breath on top of that reflected damage, you should free yourself pretty quickly. Aside from that, pretty much nothing changes on Phase 1 in terms of strategy. The only other thing is that you want to make sure that you're using your ultimates at a time that allows you to get back up toward 50% adrenaline in order to use Reflect the next time the bind special comes around. Things remain pretty consistent on Phase 2 as well. Obviously you want to use the same strategy that I just talked about for the Phase 1 bind special when he does this on Phase 2. The only other thing on this phase is that the magic Onslaught section of the fight actually presents quite a bit more danger than it does at low Enrages. I normally deal with this attack in 3 stages. First off, the first few attacks in the Mage Onslaught actually deal less damage than the others, and you can tell the difference between these attacks by the color of the orbs that he's throwing. The light yellow orangish colored ones are relatively weak, and later on he starts to use the red ones that can deal ridiculously high damage. So normally what I do is a Merciless switch and then obviously Prayer switch to protect from magic and tank the first few with Debilitate. After Debilitate I will Barricade and Soul Split for the duration of the Barricade, and then Devotion and Magic Prayer again, and that should be plenty of time to fully deplete the bar and get him back moving with his special attack cycle. Everything else on this phase is pretty standard, but like always we want to make sure that we're not phasing into Phase 3 after the Tendril special attack, just to make sure that on Phase 3 the first special that he uses isn't the Hold Still Invader special. Right at the beginning of Phase 3, I do a pretty consistent rotation every time. I start off by using Vulnerability just to increase the damage that I deal, and after that I'll immediately use Impact, and this incentivizes Telos to use his freedom, assuming that's off cooldown, which gives us the opportunity to use Asphyxiate and then Deep Impact right after and make sure that he's not able to use freedom on those longer stuns. After that I do the relatively standard Phase 3 thing. I move to the Red Beam, I use Onslaught, use a Dread Nip, use the Enhanced Excalibur special to start healing a little bit, but you definitely need to make sure on Phase 3s on high Enrage that you're dealing with the golems as quickly as possible. They charge his bar very rapidly, and since the explosion damage scales up with the Enrage level, this presents a huge danger if he gets into the explosion area of the bar. Aside from that, everything else on this phase should feel pretty routine. Just make sure those golems are staying down so you don't have to worry about the explosions, and take it as slowly and carefully as you need to. Once we move on to Phase 4, the strategy here completely revolves around when and how we phase into the fonts and how we deal with them. Once the HP cap is met at 200% Enrage, Telos will phase into the first font at 112,500 HP, and we want to be right there with 100% adrenaline and our Merciless available to cade that and get onto it as soon as possible. By standing on it immediately, we ensure that the bar won't fully charge on this first font so we don't have to deal with a so much power special attack, and the Barricade will protect us from all of the recoil damage that the font actually deals. Once we've rebuilt some adrenaline, we can use Revenge to help us deal with the golems, and just worry about Telos' special attack rotation as normal. The second font is actually what represents the most potential danger on this phase, because we are definitely going to get a so much power special from that second font. Telos phases into that font at 75,000 HP once you've reached that HP cap at 200% Enrage, and we want to make sure that we phase into that HP directly after a special attack is done to make sure that Telos has some auto attacks remaining before he uses another special attack, which will be that so much power special. This gives us the opportunity for our defensive abilities to come back off cooldown from the instant kill attack that the font actually protects us from in order for us to deal with the damage from that so much power special. Once we've hit that HP threshold, we can deal with the recoil damage from the font in either of two ways. If we got a defensive reset from our Acto equipment, we can use Barricade again just like we did on the first, and if we haven't, we can use a combination of Reflect and Rejuvenate. Assuming everything went to plan and we phased into the font at the appropriate time, we can simply deal with this the same way we did with the last one, and once our defensive abilities come back off cooldown, we can use any of our available things to deal with the so much power special attack. If, however, we made some kind of a mistake and Telos is going to use the so much power special attack while our defensive abilities are still on cooldown, there are a few things we can still do to deal with it. If you're using Ancients, you can use the Shield Dome spell. This is going to cut the damage from it in half and make it much more easy to deal with. If you're not using Ancients, you can switch to your Merciless Kite Shield, get your HP as high as you possibly can, safe up to max, and then use Transfigure. With the shield on, you should be able to get up into the realm of 13,000 HP, and the bomb at about 500% Enrage only deals about 10 to 11,000 damage, so you can tank that, and then Transfigure, once it activates, will fully heal you back. After that, the special attack rotation resumes its normal cycle until we get to 37,500 HP when Telos faces into the final font, and we want to deal with this the same way that we did with the first one. Again, we can use either Barricade or Reflect and Rejuvenate combination to deal with the damage that we're actually receiving from the font, but we want to make sure that we get onto it as quickly as possible so that the bar doesn't charge and we don't have to deal with another one of these so much power special attacks. If that's done correctly, we won't have to worry about anything in particular, and we can deal with Telos' normal special attack rotation while we finish off the golems and finish Phase 4. So that brings us to Phase 5, where things start to get a little bit shady. The very first thing we should do on spawn is find the green beam and get into it. As you get higher in rage, the golems on this phase get more and more HP, and they start to take a ridiculously long time to kill. Once I make it to the green beam, usually I'm going to Sunshine, and I'm going to use a combination of AoE abilities while I use Reflect and Revenge to increase that DPS a little bit more. Using things like Tsunami, Dragon Breath, Chain, Corruption Blast, and Detonate under the effect of Sunshine should be enough to deal with the golems on pretty much any Enrage level unless you're at some absurdly high level. Right around the time the golems are dying, you should be back up to 100% adrenaline thanks to the green beam, and you'll want to barricade just in time for the bleed to start occurring and make it to whatever of the beams clears that bleed for you. Once you've cleared the bleed, you want to head back to the green beam and use this opportunity to DPS Telos as much as possible. Stuns and Dreadnips are still useful for extending this period of time where we're able to DPS Telos, but after 250% Enrage, he not only has the ability to Freedom, but he gains a temporary stun immunity after using the Freedom ability. Usually at this point my rotation is to Onslaught first until a rockfall jeopardizes my life, and then I will switch to the Gothic Staff and just spam out a bunch of Gothic Staff specials. When Telos goes to use the instant kill attack, I'm going to deal with it with Immortality, at least for this first cycle, and immediately following the Immortality I want to have enough adrenaline available again to use stuns to stall the spawning of golems a little bit. Depending on how many stun stalls you got, this is usually when the beams change, so I tend to move over to the green one again wherever it happened to go. And this is where we're presented with our most challenging decision on Phase 5. If we're using at least 3 pieces of Acto armor, which you generally should be, there's a very good chance that we'll get a reset before the next cycle of the instant kill occurs, and then we'll be able to use Immortality again, so we can deal with this set of golems in exactly the same fashion as we did the first ones. If we have a Sign or Portent of Life, this offers us another failsafe just in case we don't happen to hit the RNG to get that reset. That will protect us from one instant kill as well. If you aren't willing to take those risks, use a few of your AoEs to get the golems down to relatively low HP before moving to the font and finishing them off. Even without resets, you'd be able to use Immortality every second rotation, and so you can rotate those two back and forth, assuming that's the strategy you want to use. Personally, I kinda like to YOLO and hope for the Acto resets because the DPS window, if you actually move to the font to kill the golems, is much shorter since you actually have to expend more time dealing with the golems and bringing them around the arena. In either case, all you really need to do is these rotations over and over again until you've had enough of a length of time to DPS Telos and the phase ends. Above all, the thing that's going to help you the most here is just to practice. The more you do these rotations, the more they'll feel like second nature, and the more you'll be able to push your Enrage higher and higher as you feel more comfortable. So thank you guys as usual for watching. I hope these tips help you out, and I will see you in the next video.